The evening had that odd stillness before a storm, like the walls of the Savannah Civic Center were holding their breath. Outside, protesters and fans gathered in equal measure, police lined the sidewalks, and drones buzzed overhead. Inside, every seat was taken. Veterans, teachers, young activists, business owners. Nobody was scrolling their phones. They were waiting. This wasn't just a town hall. It was live, national, and set to explode. President Donald J. Trump sat on stage left, his expression unreadable, hands folded tight on the armrest. His reputation as a showman preceded him. The man knew how to command a room. Until tonight. Across from him, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, the freshman lawmaker from Texas, sat tall in a clean white blazer, her natural curls tight and neat, her demeanor calm. But beneath the stillness was something sharper. Something that didn't come from PR training or poll-tested lines. It came from lived experience. And she hadn't come to play defense. The moderator, Kendra Stillwell, didn't waste time with softballs. Let's talk justice. Law enforcement. Trust. No talking points, just truth. The first few minutes were textbook. Trump praised police funding and took swipes at radical Democrats. Jasmine responded with stats, policies, and facts. No fireworks yet. Until the topic shifted. Kendra turned. Mr. President, many Americans say they feel betrayed, not just by the system, but by the people running it. What do you say to them? Trump leaned in, gripping the mic. No one's been treated more unfairly than me. I've been investigated, indicted, lied about, spied on. They've tried everything. Witch hunts. And I'm still standing. Frankly, I've been persecuted more than Martin Luther King Jr. That's what people say. They tell me all the time. There was a pause, a real thick pause. A ripple moved through the crowd. A woman in the third row crossed her arms. A student muttered, "What?" loud enough to be caught by a hot mic. Kendra turned. Congresswoman. Jasmine didn't blink. That's a hell of a comparison, Mr. President. Trump raised his eyebrows. Excuse me. You keep calling yourself a victim, she said, voice even. But the real victims are the people whose votes get thrown out, whose neighborhoods don't have clean water, whose sons don't make it home from traffic stops. And yet, you claim the system is targeting you. It was like someone popped a balloon in the middle of church. The tension snapped, and now the crowd was awake. Trump looked momentarily thrown. He adjusted his mic, then barked. I've done more for black Americans than anyone since Lincoln. Jobs, HBCUs, criminal justice reform. Jasmine raised a hand, not to interrupt, but to say, I've heard this before. Respectfully, she said, funding doesn't cancel out harm. And photo ops don't erase policy choices. You want credit for the First Step Act, but under your administration, civil rights investigations dropped nearly 40%. DOJ stopped enforcing consent decrees. Cities like Ferguson and Cleveland lost oversight when they needed it most. So why sign a reform bill with one hand and get protections with the other? Now the audience was leaning forward. Trump fumbled. You're twisting it. You people always twist the facts. That phrase landed like a slap. Jasmine didn't flinch. You people, she asked. Trump waved his hand. Don't twist my words. I meant politicians. She paused, not because she didn't have a response, but because the moment spoke for itself. Say what you mean, Mr. President. The country's listening. Backstage, a producer whispered into her mic. Ratings spiking. Across the country, clips were already being ripped and uploaded. TikTok, YouTube, Twitter. Hashtags bloomed like wildflowers. But Jasmine wasn't chasing views. This was personal. When George Floyd was murdered, she continued, you didn't call for justice. You tweeted about law and order. When Charlottesville happened, you said there were good people on both sides. When the Central Park Five were exonerated, you didn't apologize. You just moved on. But when something doesn't go your way, you call it a witch hunt. Trump tried to cut in, but she didn't stop. You say you're the most investigated president, but being held accountable isn't persecution. It's the cost of power. A single clap echoed from the back. Then two. Then silence again. Trump sat back, jaw clenched. I built the economy. Record jobs. Until COVID ruined it. Jasmine nodded slowly. You built it on the backs of essential workers. And when COVID hit, they died. Black and brown workers, single moms, janitors, teachers. You praised them, then left them. It was at this moment that something changed. Not on stage, backstage. Unbeknownst to either of them, a rogue audio technician had activated a hidden lapel mic that Trump's team had requested not be used. Only pipe his podium mic, his handler had said. We'll control the rest. But the lapel was live. And so, off camera, during a short break, Trump was heard muttering, "She's rehearsed. Probably Soros-funded. These people are always playing the victim." That audio, caught in the green room, was uploaded within minutes by a whistleblower in turn. It went viral before the second segment even aired. And suddenly, this wasn't just a town hall. It was a reckoning. Kendra returned, unaware. "Congresswoman, you've been calm under pressure. What do you think this moment says about our country?" Jasmine looked out, not at Trump, not at Kendra, at the people. "I think we're tired," she said. "Tired of being told that asking for fairness is the same as being divisive. Tired of leaders who punch down, then claim to be the ones getting hurt. Tired of being silenced every time we speak up." The room erupted, not in chaos, but applause. Honest. Raw. No prompts. Just people reacting to truth. Trump shook his head. "You're doing this for attention. You're no saint." Jasmine leaned in, not smiling, just direct. "If I wanted easy attention, I'd post at 2 a.m. and sell gold sneakers. I'm here for something heavier than that." In households across America, people leaned in. Because this wasn't about viral clips anymore. This was the start of something real. The break between segments was supposed to be 10 minutes. 10 minutes to reset the cameras, calm the nerves, and let the producers breathe. But instead of a cool down, the backstage area was spiraling into quiet chaos. In the control room behind the stage, someone whispered, "We have a problem." The tech assistant who discovered it was only 19, a local intern named Zane. He hadn't meant to blow up the night. But when he checked the backup audio feed and heard everything Trump said during the break, uncensored, smug, and raw, he didn't reach for his boss. He reached for his phone. The audio clip was only 12 seconds, but it hit like a punch to the country's gut. "She's rehearsed. Probably Soros-funded. These people are always playing the victim. They whine louder than they work." By the time the cameras resumed, the clip was already flooding Twitter, TikTok, and newsrooms. Hashtags like #VictimInChief and #SheHeardItAll were trending globally. Celebrities were quoting Jasmine. Conservative commentators were scrambling to defend Trump. The moment had crossed from politics into history. But on stage, Jasmine didn't know about the leak yet. Kendra returned from break, her smile brittle but focused. "We've had unprecedented engagement tonight. People across the country are watching, talking, texting. Let's continue." Trump had tried to regain composure. His hands were clasped tighter, his smile forced. He hadn't realized the hot mic had betrayed him. But Jasmine could sense something. A shift. A subtle discomfort in the air. Like he knew something was slipping away. Kendra turned to Jasmine. "Before we move on to closing statements, I want to ask one more thing. When people say the system isn't working for them, what do you think they're really asking for?" Jasmine didn't look at the moderator. She looked at the people. They're asking to be heard. Fully. Not pitted, not silenced. Heard. And not just when it's trendy to care about their pain. She took a breath. They want clean water. Good schools. Protection without persecution. Jobs that don't require 2 extra side hustles. And most of all, they want the truth. That's when the ripple reached the stage. Trump's aide, Blake Halston, rushed to the wings, whispering in Kendra's earpiece. The mic picked him up. "It's out. All of it. Don't tell him yet. Just move to wrap up." But Kendra hesitated. The journalist in her couldn't ignore what had just exploded across every screen in the country. Her hand shook slightly as she flipped to the final card. "Congresswoman," she said, "you've spoken a lot about accountability tonight. What does that word mean to you personally?" Jasmine paused. She could sense the electricity in the room now. A pressure she hadn't felt earlier. And in her chest, something clicked. "I come from West Dallas," she said, softly at first. Single mom. 2 jobs. A father who vanished somewhere between bad luck and bad policy. I remember the sound of police radios outside our window more than bedtime stories. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. My Uncle Terry was arrested 4 times before I turned 10. Not because he was dangerous, but because he was visible. Wrong place. Wrong skin. Wrong assumptions. The crowd was silent now. Even Trump was still, eyes narrowing. So for me, accountability isn't a slogan. It's not about punishing bad apples. It's about uprooting the rot beneath the tree. It's about walking into rooms where no one expects you to speak, and refusing to shut up. The audience didn't clap. Not yet. They just listened. Kendra cleared her throat, turning now to Trump. Mr. President, you have the last word before closing remarks. Trump smirked, leaned into the mic. I built an economy they said was impossible. I brought back manufacturing. I made us respected again. I've been hunted by the media, the FBI, fake indictments, fake news. And still I'm here. That's called strength. He turned toward Jasmine. She plays the victim beautifully, but it's an act. The line might have landed if the leaked audio hadn't already detonated across the internet. In living rooms from Miami to Milwaukee, people were watching Jasmine's eyes as she received a small index card from her assistant, Mia. The card said nothing more than, he was recorded. People heard it. It's everywhere. She closed her eyes for half a second, then opened them. You know what's wild, Mr. President, she said slowly. You act like being challenged is the same as being attacked. But truth isn't an attack, it's a mirror. Trump raised a brow. What's that supposed to mean? It means America just heard you, she said. Not your speech. Not your script. Not your crowd-tested lines. They heard what you say when you think no one's watching. There it was. The moment. The crowd reacted like a wave hitting the coast. A few gasps. A hush. Then murmurs. Trump looked confused. Then angry. What are you talking about? You don't know. Jasmine asked, voice cool. Your mic was live during the break. She didn't have to explain. The moment he realized it, his eyes darted toward the wings. Halston wouldn't meet his gaze. Kendra had been told to cut to commercial. But she didn't. She let it breathe. You said these people always play the victim, Jasmine said, quoting him calmly. That we whine louder than we work. You called this discussion clout chasing. And that's your real voice. That's the real you. Trump stood up, waving a hand. This is a setup. A trap. Fake news. But his voice cracked on the second word. Jasmine stayed seated. I'm not here because I want fame, she said. I'm here because I represent people who don't have microphones. People who can't afford lawyers. Who bury their sons after traffic stops and still get told they're overreacting. She leaned forward slightly. You say you've been hunted. You've been insulted. That's not persecution. That's scrutiny. And if that feels like an attack, maybe the problem isn't the questions. It's the answers you don't have. At that, the crowd stood. Not cheering, not booing, just standing. A slow, collective motion of people who knew they'd witnessed something irreversible. The broadcast was supposed to be 2 hours, but now it had become a national pivot point. And backstage, Trump's own team knew it. The broadcast ended with no music. No sponsor credits. Just a stark black screen. By the time the audience began filing out of the auditorium, the clip of Trump's hot mic moment had already racked up 5 million views. In less than 15 minutes, it was on every news crawl, embedded in late-night monologues, and captioned into memes. It wasn't just a PR crisis. It was political combustion. Backstage, chaos had turned clinical. Blake Halston was no longer yelling. He was whispering in code, trying to reach friendly anchors and shift the focus. Run a segment on media manipulation, he muttered into the phone. Frame it like the clip was doctored. Pushed out. Discredit the intern. But Zane, the intern who had stumbled into history, had already been interviewed by an independent journalist and uploaded the unedited raw feed to 3 separate servers. The story had outpaced the spin. In Jasmine's green room, her team sat in a stunned silence. Her assistant Mia was still holding the same note card from earlier, hand shaking slightly. I didn't think it'd go this far. Mia whispered. Not this fast. Jasmine, still in her white blazer, now unbuttoned, leaned back in the chair. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't shaken either. Just quiet. Then her phone buzzed. It wasn't a text. It was a name she hadn't seen in years. Agent E. Wells, DOJ. She stared at the screen. For a second, no one spoke. Then she answered. The voice on the other end was firm but low. Congresswoman Crockett, we need to speak. It concerns a sealed document related to your father's old trial. It's resurfaced, and it's bigger than you know. Jasmine's face didn't change, but something in her posture did. A tension returned to her shoulders. A memory she hadn't touched in over a decade. You sure this can't wait? She asked. It's already waited too long, Wells replied. And after tonight, people are going to start digging. We need to talk before they do. She ended the call and stared at the wall for a moment, distant. What's going on? Mia asked. Jasmine stood slowly. It's not just about Trump anymore. Meanwhile, at a late-night emergency gathering in a D.C. townhouse, Trump's inner circle was locked in what could only be described as a political war room. Phones rang nonstop. Laptops lined the table. Screens displayed live sentiment analysis from every major platform. We're bleeding, Trump's digital strategist said flatly. Not just on the left. Independents. Even swing state Republicans. They're calling it the most human moment in a decade, and it wasn't his. Halston slammed a fist on the table. We need a counter-move. Something big. Something that shakes confidence in her. That's when Chelsea, the press assistant, pulled up something on her laptop. There's a thread starting to circulate. An old arrest record. Sealed. Jasmine's father. It never made the news. Trump leaned in. What kind of dirt are we talking? She hesitated. Not dirt, but something complicated. He was involved in a federal whistleblower case. Disappeared right before testifying. Trump's eyes narrowed. And she never mentioned this. Never. Not once. It's like she buried it. Then dig it up. Back in Dallas, Jasmine stood at the old apartment complex where she grew up. It hadn't changed much. Cracked sidewalks, flickering porch lights, the same chain-link fence around the playground. But something about being back here sharpened her thoughts. She remembered the night her father was taken. 2 black SUVs, no words, just agents. He wasn't a drug dealer. He wasn't violent. He was a postal worker with a secret he died to protect. Jasmine reached into her coat and pulled out the envelope Agent Wells had handed her hours earlier. Inside was a redacted transcript. The title said, Confidential Memorandum, Operation Black Scroll, Civilian Whistleblower Statement / Ernest D. Crockett. Classification Level, Omega. Status, Incomplete, Witness Missing. Her hands trembled. She flipped the page and read words that made her knees weaken. Reported extensive surveillance of black political activists under pretense of security screening. Witness claimed systematic targeting, file planting, and algorithmic suppression by federal agencies, including active blacklisting from educational grants, job applications, and candidacies for office. He tried to expose them, the same machinery that had silenced so many, and they'd erased him for it. Now she was on that same list, except this time, she had a camera, and a country watching. Hours later, on the American Pulse, a conservative panel show, Trump appeared by phone. He didn't wait for questions. Folks, what we saw tonight was a well-scripted performance. This woman, Jasmine Crockett, she didn't just come out of nowhere. She's a plant, groomed by radical donors. Her father? A ghost with ties to classified cases. And you're telling me she's clean? The host, caught off guard, asked, Are you suggesting the Congresswoman is part of some coordinated operation? I'm saying, Trump said, voice tightening. We don't know who's pulling her strings, but we need to find out fast. The clip went viral. The war was no longer political. It was personal. Back at Jasmine's office, Mia scrolled through news alerts. They're going after your dad. Jasmine stood by the window, eyes on the skyline. Let them, she said. He tried to speak. They shut him down. I won't make the same mistake. She turned around, her voice low but certain. It's not just about what happened tonight. It's about what's been happening for years, behind the curtains, beneath the headlines. I've always said power doesn't like mirrors. She held up the DOJ envelope. Well, this one's about to see its reflection. The days following the town hall felt like the country had inhaled and refused to exhale. Cable networks turned Jasmine Crockett into a headline, a villain or a heroine depending on the channel. Hashtags trended, threads unraveled. Her father's classified case, once buried under redactions and bureaucracy, was now the centerpiece of a national debate. But Jasmine didn't run from it. She didn't flinch. Instead, she leaned in. A week after the broadcast, Jasmine stood again on a stage, but this time, not in a studio. It was the lawn outside the federal courthouse, and Washington, D.C. cameras were everywhere. Supporters filled the street, holding signs that didn't scream her name, but whispered something deeper. We see you. The forgotten don't forget. Truth isn't treason. Flanked by civil rights attorneys and a handful of whistleblower advocates, Jasmine addressed the crowd, not as a politician, but as a daughter. My father was erased from history, she began, voice steady. Not because he broke the law, but because he saw the law being broken by those sworn to uphold it. He believed in a system that didn't believe in him. She held up a declassified document, the same one Wells had delivered. It had now been cleared for public release. This isn't just my story. It's the story of every person who's been told they were imagining things. Every worker labeled radical for demanding fairness. Every protester surveilled instead of heard. Reporters pressed in. One shouted, "Are you accusing the federal government of targeting your family?" Jasmine didn't blink. I'm not accusing. I'm proving. Inside the courthouse, an emergency ethics hearing had been convened. Several members of Congress sat behind closed doors as Agent Wells and Jasmine presented a reconstructed timeline of her father's case. On the record, Wells confirmed what had only ever been whispered in activist circles, that a domestic surveillance program, codenamed Black Scroll, had quietly tagged certain Americans as socio-political disruptors, including veterans, educators, and rising black leaders. Most were unaware they'd been flagged. The program was never legally sanctioned, and Jasmine's father had tried to leak the truth before vanishing in 2008. Officially ruled a suicide. Unofficially, a shadow. But the twist that changed everything wasn't just about the past. Wells produced a new memo. The system didn't end with Ernest 2024. It evolved. Today, it's not vans and tailing agents. It's data, suppression algorithms, AI-generated narratives meant to discredit candidates before they can even finish a sentence. And the targets? They look like Jasmine. They sound like Jasmine, because the system fears what they represent. That night, in an unscheduled national address aired online and simulcast by multiple networks, Jasmine Crockett stepped up to a podium in front of the Lincoln Memorial. There were no journalists this time, no moderators, just light rain, a single camera, and a country watching. I'm not asking for pity, she said. I'm asking for presence, for people to stop scrolling past injustice and start standing in front of it. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. But her words landed like thunder. You are not too loud. You are not too late. You are not too much. You're just early. Early to a movement that scares the people still clinging to power. Then she paused. And if they erased my father to keep this quiet, then let them hear this loud. You can't erase what's already been awakened. In the days that followed, multiple resignations hit the DOJ's Internal Ethics Committee. The Black Scroll program was officially acknowledged and dismantled. Jasmine's approval rating, previously middling, skyrocketed among independents and even moderate conservatives. But more importantly, something had shifted in the public. Not a political pivot, a cultural one. People began asking different questions. Who else have we stopped listening to? Who else got silenced before they could speak? And across college campuses, local elections, and community forums, a new kind of voice was emerging. Fierce, measured, unafraid. They didn't quote party lines. They quoted Jasmine. Back at the Civic Forum stage, now empty and dark, a janitor found a crumpled card left behind in the dressing room. Just 5 words scribbled in black ink. Tell the truth. Stay standing. He smiled, folded it into his pocket, and kept sweeping. Because some stories don't end when the cameras turn off. Some stories begin right there.